Hi everyone, I have a clean and simple and quick and easy card project to share with you today. We are going to make these apple barrel cards using the new apple barrel die from Honeybee Stamps. That's part of Honeybee's autumn afternoon release, and this is the die set right here. It has these four little pieces so you can make your apples, your stems, your barrel, and then the little um, metal that goes around the barrel as well. This is the Autumn Buzzwords stamp set that we're also going to use. There is a coordinating die for that as well, but we're just going to use the stamp for purposes of this card. So I've cut all of my pieces out. I've arranged all the things I'm going to need for the card and we can get started. So I'm using some distress ink in peeled paint, or actually it's not peeled paint, it's shabby shutters. I always get those two confused, but I think the shabby shutters is a little bit more of a bright yellow green shade than the peeled paint. And I'm just going to add a nice little kind of glow to the center of the card with my blending brush here. And I'm using Bristol Smooth cardstock because it allows the distress ink to blend nice and evenly. And then once I have that done, I'm going to put our card panel aside and we can work on assembling our little apples. So there are four different little apple sizes here, and I've used two different colors of red cardstock to cut them out and two different colors of green cardstock for the little stems and leaves on top of our little apples. And I'm just going to arrange all my die cuts face up so that it's easier to kind of assemble all at once. I'm going to take a little dot of glue from my liquid glue and I'm going to place it in the center and then just add one of the little leaves, like kind of going off on a diagonal to the side. And I'm going to switch up the direction every now and then so that we have a whole bunch of different varieties of where the leaf is kind of sticking out on all of our little apples, because we're going to add all these little guys to our apple barrel in a second. And this is what it looks like up close. It's just so sweet and adorable. You could also draw little faces on them as well if you wanted to give a little more character to your apple barrel, but for this video we're just going to leave them faceless. Now I've cut out this little metal piece for the apple barrel using just some mirrored cardstock, and I'm just going to place that right over our barrel. For the barrel itself, I did have some wood grain cardstock. I think it's from Lawn Fawn that I used here, but a plain brown cardstock would work well. You could also stamp a wood grain image onto a piece of light brown cardstock as well to get a similar look if you really like that wood grain look, or you could just draw it in yourself as well with a Copic marker if you're adventurous. So now we're going to move on to our sentiment. So I'm going to put the autumn right up top of our card panel there, and I'm just going to place the barrel on the card base just so that I get a sense of exactly where I want my sentiment to go. And we're going to stamp autumn using some Versamark ink and then some red embossing powder, and then the is here we're just going to use some black VersaFine ink in a second. So I'm going to do them separately. And I'm going to take my anti-static powder tool and just rub it along the card base there to make sure that the embossing powder only sticks where I want it, especially since we're going to be using red embossing powder, which it would leave like little speck marks if we didn't get a good impression. And I'm just going to press down pretty hard here. And then once I get a good impression, I'll lift up the MISTI and then add the embossing powder. So I think this is Candy Apple Red Embossing Powder by Wow. And I'm just going to tap off any of the excess embossing powder there. And then maybe go over it one more time to make sure that we got lots of embossing powder so that we get a nice bright sentiment. And then I'm going to heat that with my heat gun. And now we can put the whole thing back into the MISTI, and now we'll stamp the rest of our sentiment. So I'm going to attach the is here right underneath autumn. And I'm going to take my black VersaFine ink and just stamp it. And at this point, I noticed it looks a little bit crooked there, but I'm going to show you how we're going to fix that when we add the apples into our barrel so that you don't even notice it. I'm using Fog cardstock here for our card base, and this is a standard A2 size card, 4¼ inches by 5½. I attached our barrel with a little bit of foam tape beneath it. And now we're going to start arranging our little apples in the barrel. And I'm going to make sure that our apples kind of reach right up to where that is here sentiment is, just so that it kind of takes your eye away from the fact that it's a little bit crooked. Now, another way to fix this, if you just don't want the crooked sentiment there at all, is you could just stamp the sentiment again on a strip of cardstock and then just add it right over top. So that's often the fix that I use if I make a mistake on the card panel itself. You can always just add a sentiment over it using another like thin strip of cardstock, and that's a really nice look as well for sentiments. Now I'm going to add the little nails or little bolts, and I'm using some black Nuvo drops here for this. I'm going to show you another version where I'm using silver Nuvo drops as well, so it's really a matter of personal preference. I think you could also use white as well, or you could stick some little brads in there too if you'd like to do that. Lots of different ways to decorate those little bolt heads. And that's it. So that is our card. It comes together as easy as that. Then you have a lovely little autumn card. And I'm going to show you another version. So here's another version that I made, and I used some, I think, bronze embossing powder for the autumn there. So just two different kind of color schemes, and I used some tumbled glass distressing behind the barrel in the second card. And that is it. So those are my cards for today, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I really hope you give these cards a try. Thanks so much, and I will see you again soon in another video.